Hey folks, today let's chat about compost. And the reason I want to chat about compost is because it's October 10th or 11th today, 2025, and I'm able right now, we have a bit of a sweet spot chore-wise for me on compost because I was able to get a final cutting off my back pasture behind me of grass, and the deciduous leaf fall is stepping up right now. So that 1-2 punch allows me to put together a pretty good sized pile of material that I can run through my composting system to make more compost. Now, before we get into all of that, let's talk about composting and compost in general. What is compost? From a backyard gardener's perspective, I look at compost as defining it, decayed and decaying organic matter, and the process of composting is basically taking something like that, which as you can see, grass and leaves, and turning it into something like this. Just basically a decayed version of what you saw over there. So how do you make compost like that? In essence, I think there's basically 3 primary ways people will do it. 1 is through what they call hot composting, 2 cold composting, and 3 composting in place. And what I primarily do is versions 1 and 3, hot composting and composting in place. Hot composting is when you take a material that's rich in nitrogen, a material that's rich in carbon, mix them together and add moisture. And then over time, turn it to add some air, maybe add some moisture, maybe add some more material if you need to. And with enough time, it basically decomposes into what you saw over there. It's a bacterially driven process to where you're looking to get that ratio of carbon to nitrogen at a sweet spot to where you can get your temperatures right, so you invite the right bacteria to the process, and you can kill weed seeds, and you can prevent pathogens and all that good stuff. And it gets the process done, composting, in a relatively short period of time versus composting in place or cold composting, both of which take more time. Now, cold composting is typically done, you're going to see it done through the process of creating leaf mold, which is basically just taking deciduous leaf fall, getting it damp, maybe putting it in some sort of a pile or a bag, and over a couple of years, letting a more fungal organism take hold to break it down, and then use that final product in your garden, similar to the way you use hot composting. And then there's composting in place, and this one is something that I kind of inadvertently done quite a bit of in my garden, because over the years putting this together, I didn't always have a lot of compost available to me that I was making, because no matter how big a batch I made, it just was never enough for a garden of this size. But what happened was, through the smothering of the native grass in certain areas and creating pathways, just laying wood chip on top of wood chip on top of wood chip on top of wood chip, eventually the wood chip at the bottom closest to the soil would break down, kind of on the way up. And through that, it was kind of composting. And the final product, when you dig through that, looks very similar to what you saw in that bin. The difference was that's 2 to 4 years in the making versus that being about 4 to 6 months in the making. So as a backyard gardener, how do I use compost? 2 primary ways. 1, in the garden specifically, I top dress my beds with it. What does top dressing mean? Basically it means I take the organic matter, the compost, and I put it on top of whatever surface I have. After the grass was cleared out of this pasture area, this garden area, the bed space was basically designated as compost. I would put the compost on top, I put wood chip in pathways, much like what you see behind me. And what this does, this allows me to have a planting surface that's nice and loose and loamy, so I can pull the organic matter nicely to the side, basically getting probably down right to the native soil where there's still quite a bit of firm clay. And if I'm putting a plug, I can put the plug right on top of the native soil where the bulk of it is sitting in the compost. And as it roots, it'll root both into the soil and into the compost itself. And if I need to actually direct sow seeds, I can easily just move this to the side, throw a seed in, backfill, and we're good to go. Some people who practice tillage, meaning they sort of either invert the soil through a horizontal or a vertical method, depending on the attachment they have for their equipment they're using, they'll put compost down right on the ground and then use that attachment to put the compost right into the soil itself. I prefer not to do that. I kind of like to keep the soil structure in place. I feel like there's a lot of, well, I don't feel like, there is quite a bit of fungal and bacterial life and network sort of being built in the soil. And when you take a machine like that, depending on how deep you go and how hard you go into it, you're breaking a lot of that up, and that's a lot of life being disturbed. So for my purposes, I'd rather just kind of lay the matter on top of the garden and let it kind of decompose or melt in place to assist whatever life is already there, as opposed to disturb that life and kind of force them to rebuild. And the other way I like to use my homemade compost is as a seed starting medium. So I'll basically just take this and I'll sift it through this 1/4-inch sieve into a bucket or into a Sterilite container, and I will seed start directly in that. I've had great results doing that for the most part. It's I would say it's not necessarily as perfect as a conventional medium as far as structure goes, but the actual results I've had off it have been pretty phenomenal. And so the last thing I'll show you now is what composting in place actually looks like in the garden, because I think this is something that, if you actually look up what they call the back to Eden method, if I'm not mistaken, that was sort of coined as being the way in using wood chips to build a soil structure over time, I think. Don't quote me on that, you'd have to look that up on your own. But I'll show you what sort of that looks like in my garden, because as I said earlier, I sort of did that without trying, just because I was trying to smother out the native grass in so many areas, and to that, I just kept piling wood chip on top of itself over and over, and it was breaking down. So let's go ahead and go to an area in the garden where I know there has never been any compost laid, and let's pull back the top wood chip and see what we've got beneath that. So we're sitting here on the north edge of my garden between my blackberry row and my elderberry, for those of you who have watched my garden tours. And right in between there has never actually been compost. This is wood chip on top of wood chip, as I've said a couple times. So let's go ahead and dig in and see what we've got. So already, I hope the camera's picking it up. You can see all sorts of mycelium running in this wood chip. Mycelium being a fungus. I think that's the best way to describe it. But yeah, as you can see, we're already getting into decomposed organic matter. This is, I can still see sticks in there, I can still see wood chips, but I can see a whole lot of busted up decayed organic matter, and this is still all on top of my native soil. Because if that was native soil, it would be red clay or something like a gray kind of, I can get further down in there, and yeah, I can see, gosh, I can see roots from something here. No idea what that is. And I can still see wood chip down in there. So that's all still sitting on top of the native soil, still breaking down. And that's one of the cool aspects about gardening in this way, is everything you see here, this is the north edge of my garden, the fence, I can pull that back and plant. There's no designated bed space there, there's never been compost, but if I pulled that back and threw a plug in there, it's, whatever it is, it's gonna grow just fine. That elderberry is a good example of that. And those blackberries are a good example of that. No compost in that bed. It's just organic matter breaking down. I say no compost. No finished compost was added to create that bed space. That's just decaying organic matter. Now let's finish with this. When somebody says great compost, or they refer to compost with a description that talks about the quality of it, I honestly don't know typically what they mean. I don't know what great compost truly means when someone says, I've made great compost. To me, compost is sort of I would say it's a lot like wine. Yes, it does get better with time, but really, when I think about, wine, I like the old adage, good wine is wine that tastes good. And in my mind, compost is sort of the same way. Good compost is compost that, can support and grow good plants. So do I make good compost? I don't know. All I can do is look at my garden right now, and I can tell you everything you see here is driven by the organic matter I've put down, whether it's been finished compost, semi-finished compost, or just composting in place. All of these plants, these have never been fertilized. I barely even water them. It's just been transplants that I've put, maybe some direct sowed seeds in the garden, just in whatever organic matter I have breaking down in the soil. And this is the end result. So do I make good compost? I don't know. My plants look pretty good, so I'm going to say that that's a pretty good sign of the quality of the compost that's been breaking down on top of this soil for the last few years. And before we wrap this up, let me go ahead and give you a gratuitous flower shot, because we still have some in the garden and they're still looking really pretty. That's it, folks. Composting. Organic matter broken down, put on top of my garden beds, plants go in, food comes out. Closing the loop of this decomposed organic matter, this waste product, into returning it to the earth to do something good with, and that's pretty much my process. So I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. If you did, give it a like if you like. Let's get some chatter going. Compost in the comment section. I love talking compost. And if there's more you want to see about this, please feel free to hit me up. I'll post more on it. So until next time, thanks for watching. Take care.